Welcome back, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Today, we're going to be reacting to what happened to London's trams. It's going to be interesting. I went to London a couple months ago, so I've been really, into the types of things that London has to offer. Did not ride a tram. There's probably a reason why that we're going to learn in this video. Of course, rode the classic double-decker bus, the underground, a lot of other different transportation that London has to offer. But really curious about the trams. I'm thinking when I hear trams, of course, I'm thinking like I think San Francisco, like that tram immediately. That's what I think. But most metropolises had trams run down their main streets and ancillary streets as well throughout history. London being one of them. So I'm gonna guess. Let's make a guess here. What happened to London's trams? It's just not a reliable transportation mechanism comparatively to the tube and or the buses. That's just my guess, in terms of reliability. So let's jump into it, though.
And they'll say, ask most people what they know about trams in London, and they'll say,
I know there's trams in Croydon, but I think that's it.
But did you know London...
Oh my God. One thing I love about Jay's videos, by the way, Jay Foreman right here, go subscribe to him. It's just such great content, but also layers in the entertainment with the education. Love it.
used to have the biggest tram network in Europe. So what happened to it? And why is Croydon the only part of London
And he's in public right now. That is just hilarious.
that has trams today? In oldie-woldy times, when pretty much every mode of transport involved a horse, the best way of getting lots of people to the same place was an omnibus. It was
An omnibus. Okay.
an uncomfortable and bumpy ride.
So it's like a hybrid carriage bus.
But a clever solution would be brought to London by an eccentric Victorian billionaire from America, whose
It's Doug Dimmadome. If you know, you know.
name was George Francis Train. Ha! Really? Mr. Train's cleverly simple idea was to have omnibuses run on rails running along the street. Mr. Train called them trams. Suddenly, horses could carry much heavier loads and go much faster and smoother without giving everyone an orgasm. This also made them affordable. Fares were set at the reasonable price of half a penny. But other road users hated Train's trams.
So how does half a penny work?
The rails weren't recessed into the road, they stuck out good and proper, tripping up other vehicles and causing their wheels to break off. But Train continued to build his tramways all over London without ever asking permission first, until he was stopped in his tracks in 1861 when he was arrested for breaking and injuring the Uxbridge Road. From now on, any entrepreneur wanting to build tramways in... From now on, any entrepreneur wanting to build tramways in
What?
London... wanting to build tramways in... From now on, any entrepreneur wanting to build tramways in London would have to bury their tracks nicely into the road out of harm's way and pay for the maintenance of the entire road surface. This meant they now had to solve a rather sticky problem. The average horse produced between 15 and 35 pounds of manure per day. It was famously predicted that if London's horse traffic continued to increase, it would be 9 foot deep in horse manure by
Never thought about this.
1950. The solution eventually came at the end of the 19th century with a source that was safe, efficient, cheap, clean and reliable: electricity. Electricity could be harvested either from cables above the road or a conduit below. Now that horses were no longer required and the trams were totally turd-free, the network was able to grow and grow. The London County Council built new connections linking working-class suburbs
Very interesting.
with industrial areas to help get people to work.
And is that like, you see like how it has that arm on top of the tram? Is that connected to like the lines?
Making it the first truly public transport system in London. They spread particularly far in South and East London to areas which, by no coincidence at all, continue to be poorly served by the tube. Everywhere in London was getting electric trams. Well, almost everywhere. If you look at this map of the network, you'll see a vast area.
So that's Hyde Park, right? That St. James is. I think that's Hyde.
Close to central London where tram tracks fear to tread. These were the posh parts of town: Kensington and Westminster.
These are the uppity parts, the uppity.
Well, that's understandable, I suppose. Westminster had historic streets, and those overhead cables were so ugly. That was the reason they weren't wanted here, right? Wrong. Many trams used the conduit system with no visible cables. So if it wasn't cables, why were they so trams-phobic? Trams, for want of a better expression, were for poor people.
Ooh.
Local campaigners complained that trams catered for an undesirable class of person and successfully kept
That's hilarious.
the entire
What is he spraying? Muscle? Mr. Muscle?
central London area unbetrammed.
Thank you, sir.
Because of this, two vast networks north and south of the river remained unconnected. Not because of the Thames, but because of toffs. And it would stay like this until 1906, when a big and very impressive tram infrastructure project was built here.
Kingsway in Holborn was built by bulldozing straight down the middle of the slums. The Victorians used to do this sort of thing all the time. But Kingsway was special because it came with its very own tram tunnel,
Wow.
something never done in London before, or since.
This small but truly unique piece of track linking north to south meant that by 1914, London had the biggest tram network in Europe. Yay! But not for long.
After World War I, money was tight, and tram rails were expensive to maintain.
So the tram operators began turning
This guy didn't be doing anything.
into a newer, cheaper piece of technology, the trolley bus.
Trolleybuses were like trams, but on pneumatic tyres. They didn't need rails, which meant they were quieter and more flexible, and they could overtake things like this dig.
It was the beginning of the end for the tram, and the middle of the beginning for the trolley bus. But alas, alack, London's trolley buses were not long for this world.
One person whose fault this was Minister for Transport Ernest
What's happened to his eyes?
Marples, the man responsible for provisional driving licenses, MOTs, traffic wardens, single yellow lines, double yellow lines, Dr. Beaching, and several affairs with prostitutes.
Marples wanted people driving more, partly because the car was a symbol for individual freedom, but partly because Marples' family ran a tarmac company.
Marples got councils to change their streets to make more room for cars, which meant cables had to be torn down. London's vast network of trams and trolleybuses
So a lot of lobbying is what I'm hearing.
would need to be replaced by motor buses.
Until then, the idea of getting motor buses to take on such a big job was unthinkable. Motor buses were small and heavy and noisy and inefficient. But that would all change in 1959.
The new Route Master bus, which was super efficient and ran on diesel, could carry almost as many people as a trolleybus, but had two massive advantages. One, drivers wouldn't have to worry about the trolley poles coming loose, and two, they could overtake each other. In fact, they could go literally anywhere.
With diesel fuel now cheaper than ever, it was a no-brainer.
And there's a ton, like these videos do good justice. So you can see like, looks like it's like at a station or some sort of stop right here. But if you go to London, like if you go near, you know, whether it be Westminster, whether it be Trafalgar, whether it be anywhere really in central London or on the even on the outskirts of London. When I was in when I first arrived, we were where were we? Dang, can't even remember. But there was it'll come to me. But basically there was, I think we were southwest of London. And that area specifically was kind of like on the outskirts a little bit. But as soon as we came out of the tube, you have 3 or 4 of these buses that you see behind him just taking a turn. So mass produced. So, I mean, obviously it makes sense that buses are going to be a little bit more, I would say, not just reliable, but versatile, as he was talking about.
From 1959, route masters began replacing tram and trolleybus routes all over London.
The network's capacity was reduced slightly, but since passenger numbers were dwindling anyway, nobody cared. Well, lots of people cared and they were really upset about it, but nobody who mattered cared.
Dang, that's just rude.
It was out with the and in with the.
That's pretty good sound effects, but I think he just added those in. But if he didn't, that's pretty good sound effects.
So, is there anything left of London's tram and trolleybus network that you can still see today?
There's gotta be. I mean, there's literally remnants of everything. So there's gotta be like a museum and all that stuff. Well, there is a museum. I know there is because I saw it on the things to do.
Well,
There are a few surviving tram sheds, some still with tram tracks in. There's a couple of trolley poles still there that are now used as lampposts.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's the tourist attraction right there.
Ooh.
There's a bus route in West London that still uses the number 607, the same as the original trolley.
Boring.
And this building in Walthamstow has the word tramway on it.
So the answer is no, not really. Nothing impressive. With one massive exception. This is what's left of the Kingsway Tunnel.
You can still see very, very, very clearly where the tram tunnel entrance used to be. Sometimes they open
So it's like just abandoned now? Just, I wouldn't say it's an eyesore by any means, but they should clean it up a little bit.
Up for tours, sometimes they use it as an art gallery, but at the moment it's being used to help Crossrail construction. Down at the other end, the entrance has been turned into the door of a nightclub, and the middle half has been turned into the Strand underpass.
And so the trams and trolleybuses had gone, and London forgot about them. And so did the whole country.
Cities up and down the UK were ripping up their tram tracks and pulling down their trolley cables. The only place in the country that kept its tram was Blackpool Pleasure Beach.
Trams for decades evoked
Well, that's good.
images of nostalgia in the olden days.
I used to take the tram for a farthing.
Even the word tram was funny.
Straight in front of a tram.
But then, something changed.
Traffic congestion was worsening, demand for public transport was increasing, pollution became a thing, and trams, suddenly, all of a sudden, had gradually started to suddenly become appealing again.
Croydon in South London, which had a growing town centre and no tube, was the perfect place for a 21st century experiment. For the first time in 48 years, trams were coming back.
These trams would be a fair bit different from the 20th century ones. They were single, not double-decker, and they were multiple articulated units, which basically means they're bendy.
I don't remember seeing. I don't know if I saw these.
As well as running on the streets, the new trams would make use of bits of disused or underused railways, combining the on-street convenience of buses with the separateness and speed of trains.
The Croydon tram link opened in 2000 was an instant hit, attracting 15 million passengers in its first year. And that number's kept going up ever since.
At around the same time, very similar tram schemes opened in Manchester, Nottingham, Sheffield, Birmingham and Edinburgh. And don't get me started on the resurgence of trams in the rest of Europe.
So trams are very much back in business.
Not this song. Wait, this looks like in one of the regular overground trains, not the underground. He's just chilling. Look at this guy. He's just like, bro, I do not want to be in your video.
For the 21st century. But what about London? Are there plans for any more new tram routes in London?
The Cross River Tramway, planned to open in 2016, was meant to run from Camden Town to Peckham/Brixton. The route used Kingsway, but bafflingly had no intention of using the old Kingsway tunnel, instead running on the street above. The scheme had plenty of support, but not enough plenty of money, so it never happened.
Then there was the West London tram, planned to run along one of London's busiest bus corridors from Shepherd's Bush to Uxbridge. But two burly men in suits holding a big sign were stood in the way, so
Well, dang.
this never happened either. To be fair, a road like this isn't suitable for modern trams, and most of London isn't. To dig up a street this narrow to build the tracks would be prohibitively impractical.
Some campaigners tried to save the West London tram by suggesting a compromise, where they just put the electricity cables up and make it a West London trolleybus instead.
Personally, I think that would have been a brilliant idea. A trolleybus is the best of both worlds. Cheaper and easier to build than a tram, but it still replaces noisy, polluting buses. In fact, come to think of it, why don't we do that everywhere?
London's more than 8,000 buses are a huge source
8,000. I knew it was a huge amount. It's crazy. Crazy. Very reliable, I will say. Very reliable.
of dangerous polluting air that kills 9,500.
And I will say this, I know I keep pausing. If you go to London, do not do taxis unless you want the experience. Don't do taxis or Uber. Do the bus and do the underground. That's it. I think there's an app called the Go City app or something like that. Works for the bus, works for the underground. That's all you need. Just save yourself hundreds of dollars this way.
100 people per year. TfL have tried to make them greener, but the best they've been able to come up with is a hybrid bus that uses its diesel engine a mere...
I mean, I think eventually a lot of public transport will go to more environmentally suitable places. It just really comes down to cost.
most of the time.
The bad news is the technology for a 100% pollution-free bus that doesn't need cables at all is not coming anytime soon. So I say, let's get a groove on and hang those cables back up.
A modern trolleybus would only need cables on 2/3 of its route, and those cables wouldn't need to be so spiderwebby anymore.
There's no avoiding it. Those overhead wires would still be fugly. But it's not just technology that's moved on, it's our priorities too. And if 21st century Londoners finally get to breathe clean air, then those hideous wires might end up looking quite beautiful.
Hey, do you want to hear?
And that's it. That's it. Wow. I think I learned a little bit more about trams today. How about you? That was interesting. you know. And there was a part in the video, we'll just scoot back to see. I'm not sure. You see this, what he was showing right here? I'm not sure where this is. This definitely does not look like central London. It's like on the outskirts for sure, if it's even on the outskirts, if it's not in a different city. But I don't remember seeing this at all, necessarily. So very interesting. It'd be very interesting to see, if we go back a little bit even more, what they're gonna do with this right here. Because yeah, I think they could make something really cool out of it. I think one thing he forgot to mention, is I think there's a transportation museum, which you could possibly see some good remnants of the trams there. But yeah, that's interesting. A little bit more knowledge in the thinking cap about London. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out. Bye bye.